go. Yeah. Hi, my name is Inaye. I'm from Brazil. I'm myself an artist. I'm very, very happy to be here. I think this is a very historic moment to hear all of what you're saying in Havana. And I identified a lot with the various things that you've mentioned. Especially when you talk about giving voice to the anonymous people. And connecting to the question that you just did, the idea of bringing to the public this voice is something that is very relevant. And I'd like you to comment on a particular situation that is going on right now in Cuba with a Cuban artist called Tania Bruguera. In the end of December, she did a performance that she had already previously done in a previous biennial, some years ago, in which she put a microphone in a city, in the Plaza de la Revolución, to give voice to people, and she's been arrested. And she's been arrested since then in Cuba without being able to leave the country. And as far as I spoke to a lot of the Cubans in here, it feels like that it's very difficult to be able to have this voice and to be able to have the opportunity of really speaking out, and because the discourse is enclosed. Just a couple of days ago, Tania has been denied entrance in the Museum of Fine Arts, and right afterwards, at the end of a performance, she read the entire.
I know the incident. With respect, I know the incident. So ask me the question.
Yeah, I'd just like you to comment on this particular situation. How do you think it's possible to make the public speech really public to the Cuban people and not only to an international press inside the system, in order to be able to give voice to the people that do not have voice, to these anonymous people?
Now, first of all, thank you for asking this question. It's obviously, as we say in America or in England, the elephant in the room. There's an elephant in the room and nobody wants to talk about it, right? And of course, the person who gives the talk has to lead the elephant into the room. And I'm not unhappy, yes, certainly. Please, is somebody just looking up? Will you look up for who wants to ask questions? Will you just look out your hands? There's one here, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there. So, let me first of all say that, and I'm not fudging your question, that I'm not competent here and now without knowing the microculture of what is going on. All I know is what I read from newspapers. And of course I'm concerned, very concerned about this kind of an issue. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But let me just give you the conditions of my own discourse. First of all, I'm unaware of the detail here. I know what I read in the newspapers to some degree. And when I speak to people here, there is in my view, an overwhelming understanding of Tania Bruguera's desires without necessarily always thinking that this is the right means of doing it. So, but it's not my job to speak in the voice of other Cubans who are here, who know the situation. So as a general principle, of course, any artist who is deprived of the rights of performance, I don't know the details, I want to make this clear, but who seems to be contained from the performance, or turned away from a national gallery. This is a regrettable situation. I know it happens in my country, it has happened in India, to the extent to which the most public and significant Indian artist was pursued by Hindu fanatics and spent the last 10 years of his life living in Delhi, living in the Gulf and in England. And I met him in Dubai, And he's the canonical, I'm not saying he's the most Indian, he's the canonical Indian artist who felt completely trammeled. So I'm aware of this. In my own country, I know better, or in the States, to some extent in Europe, I know better the conditions. So, of course this is regrettable. Nobody here is applauding. Everybody here, as far as I can tell, or anybody I've spoken to, is deeply troubled. Now, again, having said that I do not know the conditions, I would suggest only the following. One, that art is always, or very often, about acts of daunting courage. Art has that way of breaking open the framework. But in conditions of transition, this is a view from the outside, please do. In conditions of vulnerability and where there are art communities also who probably want many of the things that the artist wants, there must be ways of, and I'm not suggesting she hasn't them, but there must be ways of making connections such that spaces open up for everybody. You see what I'm saying? Or you talk about the public, that spaces open up. A public is constituted quite properly when a number of voices can occupy that space. But as we know, a public is a constitution of a we. That doesn't mean that the we is non-conflictual. There can be many conflicts in that. But there is something about an enunciation or a discourse that recognizes the conditions of its articulation. In my view, in a very different context, I'm not making an analogy. In my view, do I think that the editors of Charlie Hebdo should have been shot? No. Do I think that that Salman Rushdie, and I was a participant in that whole struggle, Salman Rushdie should have had to hide for 10 years of his life? No, I do not believe that. But I do think, absolutely not, I'm totally against that. I talked about being against censorship, but I do think that there are moments in which we have to be conscious of what constitutes the public. It seems to me that very often there is an understanding, what I call a fundamentalist understanding of free speech, that anybody can say anything anywhere. Now, some people have the privilege, I'm not talking about Tania Bruguera, I'm talking more generally. Some people have the privilege of saying something wherever they want it. But speech, and this is where I have a great respect for First Amendment, my colleagues and my friends who are First Amendment specialists in America, I have great respect for them because it's a very courageous thing. It is very courageous to allow a group, a political group who you poisonously disagree with, to have their say. It shows a certain stability and it shows a certain strength. It is very courageous for the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, to defend, as they did at one stage, communists for taking public positions, or at other stages, I hated it, to defend, at least to offer a defense for rabid white supremacist racists. It is very courageous. But I think all these are matters of calculation, of what is effective, particularly in moments of transition. When I have the evidence, and when I know that, what is it that indeed will constitute a progressive moment or step for a public to be constituted, when I have that evidence, I will be able to give a better answer than the one I have now. And let me make clear, I do not believe in censorship. I do not believe in censorship. I do not believe in an artist not being able to enter a public space unless they have a history of going and tearing paintings or shooting people or destroying the institution. But at the same time, to give you a responsible answer, an answer truly in keeping with the ethics of constituting a public, I would like to know, I would need to have a view of what the conditions of enunciation are. Because in my view, there is no free speech. Do you think that those who have not got literacy in the United States because of a bad education can represent themselves, however much free speech they have? That doesn't mean that they should be censored, but I'm saying the whole question of freedom and public in the public realm, I would need to know much more about the conditions of the enunciation. That's what I'm saying. I'm sorry if it sounds like a professor's hedging the question, but it is not. I believe in it.